So last year, I actually canceled 3 pre-orders for different cameras because there were so many good ones and I couldn't make up my mind, but I finally settled on the Canon C70. And even with everything else out right now, I think this is the cinema camera for everybody. We've had a ton of cinema cameras come out lately, so why do I think the C70 is a bigger deal? For example, Sony a7S III, another camera I love, I was very tempted by when it was announced, are that this still has built-in NDs. I think that is going to continue to be a defining factor of what a real cinema camera is. It has built-in cooling, so it is effectively never going to overheat. And it has built-in XLRs, so anytime we're doing a more professional audio situation, we don't need adapters, we're not dealing with smaller cables. We just plug right in and it has good preamps. All of this video is either shot on the C70 or the Canon R. Try to spot the difference. At the end, we'll do a direct comparison side by side, so stick with us till then. So this isn't a straightforward review. I just want to go through some of the reasons that I think we're at a turning point for cinema cameras. Price and the size of cameras like the C70 is starting to redefine what we can do at more affordable levels. This is a Netflix-approved camera. It has time code in, it shoots in 10-bit. And how about I go through some more of the features while we look at some sample footage that we've been shooting on this thing all week. So there's a wide variety of codecs in here. You can shoot 4K at either 24, 30, 50, 60, 48, 120 frames per second, which is amazing. There's a huge variety and they all look beautiful. Whereas I was used to, on my mirrorless cameras, kind of making compromises when I was shooting in faster frame rates. The 120 frames per second looks kind of perfect. There is absolutely nothing you're giving up when you switch over to it. It also has a flip out screen, which is kind of a mirrorless, less professional feature traditionally, but actually opens up a lot of opportunities when you're shooting in professional contexts. Huge advantage over mirrorless is that there are physical controls for all of the important video features that you want to access all the time, like white balance and ND filters and peaking and zebras and waveforms. And the C70 has false color, which is something that drove me crazy when I used to shoot on the C200. It never previewed real C-Log 2, so I could never tell what the real exposure was. I couldn't use false color. This has it built in, so there are so many ways to measure your exposure and get it exactly right. So Anya has been putting together this project of shooting the most photographic restaurants in Calgary, so this is kind of an opportunity to also test the C70. So we're getting some B-roll at the same time, just kind of put the camera through its paces, which, by the way, is the most important thing you can do when you get a new camera. Make sure that you know how to use it. Read the manual. So for the photography for this, we're using the Canon R. It's really nice to be able to pair cameras from the same system, but the R drives me crazy for video because it is 8-bit and only shoots C-Log, whereas the C70 is 10-bit and shoots C-Log 2. And I think that we're hitting a really big step right now where a bunch of cameras have come out that are 10-bit and have these really flat profiles. So they're going to be able to have full-on cinema dynamic range and the bit rate to be able to grade it. This was a huge problem in the past. Cameras like the R or the a7 III that everybody was using, everybody loved them, didn't really hold up to color corrections when you tried to get all the dynamic range out of them. The macro blocking, there's like big chunky pixels everywhere. It looked kind of awful. Now, all of these new cameras can get similar dynamic range to something like a Red. In the case of the C70, Canon says that it's 16 stops. I don't believe it. Or you can watch my grading video to see how I do it. And this Moroccan restaurant is a perfect place to test high ISOs because it's pretty dark in here, but beautiful lighting. I try to always shoot the C70 at 800 ISO. It's when you got the most dynamic range. You can bring it up to 1600 is still really clean. 3200 is kind of pushing it. I don't really shoot that high if I can avoid it, but coming from the C200, way better. You have a lot more room in low light settings to crank up that ISO. So now we have the C70 mounted on the Zhiyun Crane S2, and I can't tell you how excited I am to have our cinema camera on a one-handed gimbal. It used to be that I always had to have two, like a mirrorless, a small mirrorless that was for mobile work like this, where we just want to run and gun. But now the cinema camera is the small camera, and this is game changing. Obviously the C70 isn't the only good small camera right now. Sony's got theirs, there's lots of them. But the fact that in just a few minutes I was able to mount this and balance it with no issues has me really excited. This is gonna be a big deal for us. This is what Marco's setup looks like right now. It is a little heavy, I think, right, Marco?
We'll get used to it.
But it is pretty minimal. Like if I come in a little closer here, there really isn't much going on. We've got the Rode Wireless Go 2 mounted on top, and that's it. And the 20mm Sigma lens, I absolutely am in love with this lens. But yeah, we're suddenly mobile with full studio quality production. We're out here shooting in the full daylight, and it's really hard to see the screen at all when you're in sunlight. When I was shooting those ski videos, I could barely tell how I was exposing the image. A lot of it was over and under. Fortunately, I could recover it in post, but it is really hard to tell what you're shooting. So you kind of need to either have an external monitor or put on an EVF. What I saw Dave Mays is doing is he has a sun hood that he's just kind of putting on the screen all the time. Looks like it works, but it's also kind of bulky. I'm not sure how I'm gonna solve this problem yet, but it does drive me crazy. I never realized how much I could miss an EVF until I didn't have one. Right now, there's only two things I want. One is bubble tea. So that's taken care of. Now the one other thing is I want you guys to subscribe, because I know so many people watching this aren't. So this is your friendly reminder, hit that subscribe button. All right, so now it's time to compare the Canon R to the Canon C70. It's not totally a fair comparison because the R shoots 8-bit and the C70 shoots 10-bit, but even if this was the R5 or the R6, those only shoot in C-Log. Soon they'll have C-Log 3, but they don't have C-Log 2, which is a big difference. And while we talk about it, we're also going to talk about the sponsor of this video, Squarespace, which, if you don't already know, is the best place to build a website on the internet, especially to host a portfolio. If you're a filmmaker or photographer, it is where you want to be, and I've been there for about a decade now. You've already heard about how intuitive it is to design the website all around your brand in just a few minutes. Squarespace's professional designers made responsive templates that look good, no matter what you want to do with them, with minimal effort. But there's also some awesome new features like the members area. So if you've got a community that is into the same thing as you, you can build that community out on Squarespace, giving your biggest fans special access to special content. You can also build a store if you have something to sell. E-commerce is fully supported. While you're looking at these samples, don't look at depth of field or sharpness because the lenses don't match. This is all about comparing the color and the dynamic range. Squarespace also has in-depth analytic tools so you can know where people are coming from, all the SEO you're gonna need to make sure people are finding your website, and so much more. To find out about it and get started, head to squarespace.com. You can start building a website right now for free, and when you're ready to launch, use offer code Tyler Stalman to get 10% off your first website and domain. So thanks again, Squarespace, and let me know what you think in the comments of this comparison. But is it worth the price difference? Like, would you spend the extra money to get this quality out of the C70? All right, now we're auditioning this as the new vlogging setup. It's actually possible, like one hand, I kind of could do this. This lens is like just barely wide enough. I don't know, this is pretty ultimate. I like this. All right, so let's try this. Let's be on the move. How does this actually work for vlogging? So if I were to vlog on this, I could do this for like an hour. I mean, as long as I put the camera down every few minutes. Probably put a wider lens on here. Are people vlogging with this? Is Potato Jet using this as his vlog camera? I guess we need to reevaluate, like, what is the ultimate vlog camera this year? It's kind of hard to say. I don't think it's this. It's probably like a Sony a7S III, right? So we got this all rigged up, and it is totally usable as like a run and gun gimbal cinema kit. All right, so we're hanging out shooting in Chinatown, Calgary. I'm just hand holding it right now, no mount on it, and it's got the 16-35 EF lens. Now, something strange that happens with the Canon C70 is all of a sudden your EF glass becomes a lot more valuable. This is a big plus to me because I have a lot of EF glass that I've invested in. And right now I have the digital stabilization turned on, so this should be a little bit more steady than if I was turning it off. Well, let's see what that looks like. Here it is turned off, so we're a tiny bit wider. It crops in to do that digital stabilization. Okay, but back to the EF glass. The reason it's better is the adapter. Canon has released a 0.71 times adapter just for the C70. I think you can make it work on some other cameras, like maybe the Red Komodo, but it's really made for the C70, and it allows your full frame EF glass to be effectively almost full frame. So it used to be, if I wanted to do something like this on my C200, which I wouldn't do because it was too heavy, I didn't have any lenses that wide. Like the equivalent of this is 11 millimeters, and it's hard to find a lens that wide that's sharp and nice. And if you're not already used to these conversions like Super 35 and full frame, the C70 is a great opportunity to learn because it can kind of do both. I think the Canon adapter is basically a requirement if you want to get the most out of the C70, especially if you already have some EF glass. Now the funny thing is, I'm probably not going to buy any RF lenses for this in the near future. I'm going to stick to EF for a while. Let's talk about this body a little bit because it's kind of the most interesting thing going on here. It's a lot of the reason that this is a huge upgrade from the C200 for me is I can bring it with me everywhere. That really makes me happy. All that I've done for rigging so far is I've got this wooden camera handle that just screws into the top. And then a lot of the time I'm also using my small HD monitor on it. I added a cold shoe mount to the back where the Rode Wireless Go can be. I mean, well, you gotta see it all rigged up. Let's insert a photo here so that you can see it. The most important thing is you're getting legit cinema quality out of this much smaller body. So I had the C200 before. It looked great, but was very noisy in the shadows. This gets rid of a lot of that noise. And it's almost exactly the same as the C300 Mark III, which has the exact same sensor, but it captures in RAW. This does not shoot RAW. So the trade-off in image quality, the only thing holding this back from being next to the best cameras in the world is highlights that are very close to clipping lose some saturation. I've really seen this in some other people's tests, and that's because it's missing RAW. C200, same thing, holds those extreme highlights a little bit better, but if you expose this properly, it will match those other cameras. Now, usability, I can carry this camera anywhere. It uses the BP A30 battery, which lasts at least like 3 hours. I actually went through the whole ski day without killing the battery. That's amazing. Very important. Okay, check this out. Boot time. That's really fast. It's much faster than the C200. And then this is huge. On the C200, I have to turn the camera off to review files. On here, I press the media button and it's reviewing within a split second. That's game-changing for me. Tons of physical buttons, which I love. I've remapped a few of them. It supports 2 SD cards. I can record proxies to one of them for easier editing. By the way, the files are better than the R5, but if you have an older machine, they may be a little slow. You might want to go with a proxy editing workflow. But I do have some complaints about this body. The plastic feels a little cheap. It's not as nice feeling as the 1DX, which it looks a lot like, and not even as nice as the Canon R5, which is not even as expensive. I wish Canon had made this feel like more of a premium body. Especially like this dial on the back, it feels pretty cheap. I've heard some people talk about their screens breaking. Mine hasn't yet, so let's hope it never does. And this function button is so loose that it is almost useless. So overall, it's incredibly easy to shoot with, and the image quality is amazing. I just hope that it is robust enough to last as long as those more expensive cine cameras.
I just always have the waveform on, more or less.
Right. Oh, I see. Yeah.
And you can toggle it on and off from the touchscreen, so it's...
Yes. Okay. Touchscreen stuff is huge on this, and that is actually something that's hard to go back to with the C200. And also with Canon R. So do you even have an R anymore? Or are you just R5?
I have an R6. Well, I have an R somewhere too, but I have an R and an R6, yeah.
The record button on the screen is surprisingly a game changer.
Handy.
It sounds like nothing, but a great example is like sometimes I'm putting the camera on a tripod. I was doing this the other day and all the shots need to line up perfectly. The camera can't move. Pressing a physical record button makes you much more likely to slightly twist the camera, to slightly bump it and pressing the screen. Yeah. So I love that.
The whole new menu system on this touchscreen for changing settings is astonishingly better than every other Canon cinema camera. Yeah. It's so nice that you just touch the one little touchscreen button and it's like, here's 10 of your most recent. And then you can go into another touchscreen menu. And then there's that pages menu that kind of looks Blackmagic design-y.
Yeah. Which
the crop.
Good design. I love the way Blackmagic does it.
So
yeah. So if you're anything like me and you're about to pick up a C70 or you just did, you're going to be able to go get an hour of content, me talking to Jesse Driftwood all about our experiences with it. That's on the podcast. So just click that video. Or if you just want to shoot better video, I've got a great breakdown of the differences between YouTube and movie cinematography. So go watch that one right now.